What do you call it? When a $6 billion sports team makes ordinary people wonder if they're supposed to help pay for its dream stadium. Because that is the point where this stops feeling like football and starts feeling like pressure. You can be a regular person in Illinois just trying to keep up with groceries, rent, gas, all the normal stuff that already costs too much, and somehow still get pulled into a fight over what one of the richest brands in American sports wants next. That's the part that should make people uneasy when a team gets big enough. Its history does not just buy loyalty, it can start buying leverage. Before we get started, if you want clear, practical insights on the economy and the trends that could impact your money, hit subscribe. On this channel, we break down complex changes in a way that helps you see what matters early. Thanks for watching. Now let's get into it. And once you see that, the real question is not whether the Bears want something bigger. It's what kind of pressure that ambition puts on everyone else. The problem is not that the Bears want more. Big teams always want more. More control, more revenue, more prestige. That part is normal. The problem is who gets pulled into paying for more. Because once a team gets this big, this old, this tied to a city's identity, the conversation stops sounding like a business negotiation and starts sounding like an emotional test. And the people taking that test are usually not the people writing the deal. Think about how strange that is for a second. You can be a regular person in Illinois. You are not in the room with owners. You are not sitting at the table with league executives. You are not getting a cut of premium suites or naming rights or new development money. But somehow, a fight over what the Chicago Bears want next can still land right in your life. That's the part people feel in their gut. Because the Bears are not just another business. They've been part of Chicago for generations. That history gives them something most companies would kill for emotional leverage. And once that leverage enters the picture, saying no stops being simple. It starts to feel risky. It starts to feel disloyal. It starts to feel like if you say no, somehow you're the one killing progress. The side with the most money also gets to borrow the most emotion. The side with the least control gets handed the hardest question. If this team matters so much, what are you willing to give up to keep it? And that is where this story really begins. Because before we even get to the dollars, the land, or the politics, we have to get clear on one thing. What exactly are the Bears trying to build that makes this kind of pressure possible? The Bears are not chasing a new field. They're chasing a new machine. This is not just about replacing an old stadium. It is about control. Control over the building. Control over the game day experience. Control over the money that gets made before kickoff, after the final whistle, and on days when there is no game at all. That's the prize. Not the field, the control. Soldier Field may be iconic, but iconic does not always mean efficient. If you are the Bears, you do not just see history. You see limits. You see a building you do not fully control. You see revenue streams that do not flow the way you want. You see a ceiling on what this franchise could become. And to be fair, that part is not crazy. Of course, a team like the Bears wants more. More flexibility. More premium seating. More high-end events. More chances to turn one Sunday game into a year-round business machine. That is how modern sports works now. A stadium is not just a stadium anymore. It is a platform. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. When an ordinary fan hears new stadium, they might picture a better place to watch football. Cleaner concourses. Fewer headaches getting in and out. Something the city can feel proud of. But when a team hears new stadium, it is often thinking several layers past that. Long-term revenue, more control, more leverage next time around. That's a completely different ask. The Bears already put real money on the table when they spent around $200 million to buy land in Arlington Heights. So this is not fake interest. This is not a rumor floating around sports radio. This is a serious push toward a different future. And once a team spends that kind of money, it is telling you something very clearly. This is not just a dream. This is bargaining power. That is the host truth. At the center of this part, the Bears are not just asking for a field. They are chasing a model. A newer model. A more powerful model. A model where the team captures more of the upside and controls more of the experience. And once you understand that, the next question gets sharper. What exactly are they expecting the public to help carry? Here's the part people don't see. When teams talk about a new stadium, most people picture the obvious thing. The building, the seats, the field, the giant screen, maybe a nicer Sunday, maybe a better fan experience. That is not the whole ask. Because the public side of these deals is almost never just help us build the stadium. It is the roads around it, the transit around it, the utility work, the surrounding infrastructure, the tax treatment, the long tail of public decisions that keep stretching long after the ribbon-cutting photos are gone. And that's where the story changes. In the Bears' case, we are not talking about some small patch-up job. We are talking about roughly $855 million in public help for infrastructure around the project. Not the polished rendering. The real version. The version where somebody still has to explain why that kind of public support makes sense. And then there's the part that sounds boring until you realize how much power is hiding inside it: taxes. Because once you get into long-term property tax treatment, certainty agreements, and protections that can stretch out for decades, this stops sounding like a simple sports upgrade. Now you are in the world of long shadows. That is the host truth here. The stadium is the headline. The real fight is everything wrapped around it. A regular person hears new stadium and thinks maybe better traffic flow, maybe more jobs, maybe something exciting for the region. But a working family hears public infrastructure and long-term tax treatment and hears something else too. One more giant project showing up with a handout, before anyone can clearly explain where the upside ends and the obligation begins. That's a very American feeling. You are told this is about the future. You are told this is growth. You are told this is vision. And then somewhere down the line you realize the public is not being asked to admire the project. The public is being asked to carry part of it. And once that clicks, the whole conversation changes. Because now the question is not whether the Bears want something bigger. The question is, when people finally get a look at the actual bill, do they still say yes? Here's the line people in power love to blur. Saying no to the bill does not mean saying no to the team. Those are not the same thing. Because one of the easiest ways to win this kind of argument is to blur that line. To make people feel like if they question the money, they must not really care about the franchise. If they hesitate, they must be small-minded. If they push back, they must be the reason the team leaves. That is emotional pressure. And it works. But we already have proof that people can love a team and still reject the deal. Look at Kansas City. This was not some city that hated sports. This was not a fan base that had checked out. The Chiefs were one of the biggest teams in the country, coming off massive success with all the pride and momentum that comes with that. And still, when voters in Jackson County got a real look at the plan, they said no. The proposal was tied to more than $2 billion built around a sales tax extension for 40 years. In the end, about 58% voted against it. That matters more than people think, because it destroys this lazy idea that the public only pushes back when they do not care. Sometimes people push back because they care, because they do not want loyalty turned into a blank check, because they are tired of being told that being a good fan also means being a soft target. And that tension is all over America right now. A person can wear the jersey on Sunday, cheer their head off, and still look at a decades-long tax extension on Tuesday and say, "No, I'm not signing that." That's not hypocrisy. That's being an adult. That is the host truth in this part. Love does not erase math. If you're still watching, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me your age and where you're watching from. And if you've had any experience with this topic, share that too. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for being here. Now let's keep going. And that's where these stories get more dangerous. Because in America, saying no does not always end the deal. Sometimes it just sends the deal looking for a new address. The deal does not die when people push back. It moves. A city can hesitate. A county can vote no. A governor can stall. And the deal still may not be dead. It just starts looking for another zip code, another tax structure, another group of officials willing to call it growth instead of a giveaway. Because once a team has enough brand power, it is no longer negotiating with just one place. It is negotiating with the fear of losing it. And the second that fear gets loose, another city, another county, another state can step in and say, "We'll talk." That is exactly why the Bears story matters beyond Chicago. Illinois has been cautious, but Indiana has made it very clear that it is paying attention. It has already built a legal path that could help bring the Bears across the border if the opening is there. So now this is not just a question of whether Illinois wants the deal. It is also a question of whether someone else wants the team badly enough to make the pressure worse. And once that happens, the whole balance changes. Because now the public is not just being asked, "Do you support this project?" Now the public is being cornered with a more loaded question. How sure are you that you want to say no if another place is ready to say yes? That is pressure with a countdown on it, and it is not rare. Across the country, more than $43 billion in public money went into sports facilities from 2000 through 2022. That is not one weird deal. That is a long-running system with a very recognizable playbook. That's the part people miss. These fights do not get smaller when the public gets skeptical. The map just gets bigger. A commuter in Illinois might not care about the legal paperwork in Indiana. They might not follow bond structures or tax mechanisms or any of that, but they can still feel what is happening. The conversation stops being, "Is this a good project?" and starts becoming, "How much panic can this team generate before somebody caves?" That's how leverage gets bigger than the room it started in. And if you want to know what the end of that road looks like, you do not have to imagine it. Oakland already lived it. So what does losing actually look like? It does not look like a spreadsheet. It looks like fans showing up anyway, even when they feel humiliated. It looks like people wearing the colors of a team they no longer trust. It looks like a city realizing that love, history, and loyalty were never the same thing as control. That is why Oakland matters. Because Oakland was not just losing games. Oakland was losing the relationship. Fans watched a team they had grown up with drift further and further away, while ownership pushed toward Las Vegas and a new stadium deal backed by roughly $380 million in public support. And when people in Oakland felt that slipping away, they did something that says everything about this story. They showed up in massive numbers for reverse boycotts. Not because they had stopped caring, because they cared enough to make the pain visible. That's brutal to watch if you've ever loved a team for real. A fan can take a bad season. A fan can take a rebuilding year. A fan can even take an owner they do not like. What cuts deeper is the feeling that none of their loyalty actually counted when the real decisions got made. That is the emotional cost these stadium fights love to hide. People talk about relocation like it is a business outcome, a market move, a strategic shift. Very clean language. But for the people left behind, it does not feel clean at all. It feels personal. It feels like being told the memories mattered, the money mattered, the tradition mattered, right up until something better came along. And that is the host truth here. The final bill in these stories is not always financial. Sometimes it is cultural. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes it is a city finding out too late that it was never really negotiating from strength. That is why Bears fans, Illinois residents, and really anybody watching this should pay attention before the story reaches that point. Because once a team has one foot out the door, the debate changes. It is no longer about whether the deal is good. It becomes about how much a community is willing to surrender just to avoid the feeling Oakland already knows. And this is the question nobody gets to dodge. What does a city actually owe its team, not emotionally, not symbolically, not in some movie version of civic pride? I mean in real life, in dollars, in risk, in leverage, in what ordinary people are expected to swallow because the alternative feels worse. Because that is where this gets uncomfortable. It is very easy to say you have to do whatever it takes to keep the Bears. That sounds strong. That sounds loyal. That sounds like the kind of thing a real fan is supposed to say. Until you picture who, whatever it takes, actually lands on. It lands on the person who is never in the room. The resident. The taxpayer. The family trying to keep up with everything else that already costs too much. The people who do not get equity in the deal, do not own the franchise, do not control the terms, but still get told the community should step up. That stops being a clean question the second you put real people under it. Because on one hand, losing a team is real. Oakland proved that. The anger is real. The grief is real. The feeling of being left behind is real. And if you are in Chicago, or anywhere with a team stitched into the identity of the city, that fear is not fake. But neither is this other truth. The bigger the symbol, the easier it becomes to use that symbol as pressure. That is the host truth I keep coming back to. A team does not have to threaten people in some cartoon villain way for the pressure to be real. All it has to do is let the community imagine the loss. Once that fear starts doing the work, the leverage is already there. So maybe the real test is not whether fans love the team enough. Maybe the real test is whether a project this big can stand up without asking ordinary people to carry part of the burden just because they are emotionally trapped by what the team means. And that is where people split. Some will say if a team is part of the soul of a city, then yes, the city should help keep it. Others will say the opposite. If a team means that much to a city, then it should be even more careful about using that meaning as bargaining power. Honestly, I think that split is the whole story. Because this was never just about whether the Bears want a better stadium. Of course they do. It was about where loyalty ends and leverage begins. So I'll leave you with this. If this were your city and this were your team, would you help pay to keep them? Or would you say the moment loyalty gets turned into pressure, the answer has to be no? If you found this video helpful and interesting, please don't hesitate to hit like and subscribe to the channel. If you share this video with someone who might benefit from it, that would mean a lot to us and be a huge source of encouragement. With your support, we'll continue creating meaningful content that brings practical information and real value to everyday life. Thank you sincerely for being with us. We truly look forward to seeing you in the next video.